Graduation day arrived with more weight than celebration. I had imagined walking across a stage, but instead my morning began with a meeting request marked urgent. I stepped into the conference room, still carrying the folder that held my diploma. The executives were already seated, and the atmosphere held that familiar mix of boredom and forced courtesy. My boss greeted me with a smile that never reached his eyes. He announced to the room that I had finally completed my night classes, then questioned the usefulness of an MBA for someone in my position. A few people chuckled, unsure whether to join his ridicule or remain neutral. I kept my expression calm and let the moment pass. When the laughter faded, I walked to the center of the table and placed a business card where everyone could see it. I offered no comment. I did not clarify its meaning. The title rested in bold print: Chief Operating Officer. The company name below it belonged to his largest competitor. The executives leaned forward as curiosity shifted into disbelief. My boss reached for the card, expecting a joke. His hand hesitated. His tie suddenly felt too tight. The practiced smile collapsed under the weight of understanding. He looked around the room for support, but silence filled every corner. The executives avoided his eyes as recognition unfolded across their faces. Their reactions formed a quiet circle of judgment that no one dared to voice aloud. I remained still, allowing the moment to breathe. I did not defend myself. I did not revisit his years of comments. I simply watched him search for words that refused to appear. He did not know yet why I was there. When people look back at success, they often imagine bold steps and loud victories. My truth was quieter. Long before the promotion conversations and the polished meetings, there were evenings when the world around me slowed to a whisper. I returned home after work, helped with homework, cleaned the kitchen, and waited for the house to fall silent. When the last light clicked off, I opened my textbooks. The coffee beside me grew cold before I reached the second chapter. The routine never changed. These hours were not sacrifices for ambition. They were preparations for moments I suspected would come. I learned to read contracts without emotion. I studied how structures fail from inside their own walls. I trained myself to understand the flow of decisions long before anyone announced them. Every quiet night shaped a sharper instinct. My boss never saw those evenings. He saw only the employee who stayed late and arrived early. He did not see the woman who sat alone at a kitchen table drawing diagrams of financial exposure. He never imagined that each lesson built a ladder he would one day watch me climb. I did not study to impress him. His opinion had no influence over my effort. What I pursued was knowledge that could not be taken away, delayed, or undermined. I wanted the ability to walk into any room and understand where the real power rested. I wanted freedom from guessing and hoping. I wanted an exit that did not depend on his approval. Education does not make noise. It builds exits. Months before the graduation meeting, something unexpected occurred. A quiet message arrived from a senior figure at the rival company. He asked for a conversation without urgency and without description. I agreed, assuming it would be a discussion about industry trends or market shifts. Instead, he opened with a simple observation. He said I understood patterns that others ignored. He said I recognized revenue leaks before they turned into losses. Most importantly, he said I documented everything. The rival company did not search for someone with a new diploma. They searched for someone who could see the truth beneath polished reports. They had watched my department reports for years. They noticed how my analyses corrected numbers that never aligned. They paid attention to decisions that appeared responsible but masked deeper problems. They understood that I perceived risk long before it became visible to the board. Our meetings stretched longer than expected. He asked how I approached operational breakdowns. He asked how I assessed leadership blind spots. Every answer I offered came from nights of study, not from the recognition my boss withheld. By the end of the conversation, he did not speak in possibilities. He spoke in certainties. He outlined a role designed for someone who could both predict failure and rebuild trust. He named a title that changed the direction of my life. They valued accuracy. They valued discretion. They valued someone who would not use information recklessly. Their interest was not based on my diploma. It came from years of quiet observation and methodical preparation. They did not hire my resume. They hired my silence. There are moments in a career when small details reveal larger truths. I began noticing subtle inconsistencies long before anyone suspected wrongdoing. A vendor appeared twice under two different names. An audit request arrived late and was quietly approved without explanation. A supplier received payments that did not match the volume of work recorded. None of these patterns were allowed. They were the kind of discrepancies that dissolve when people are distracted by deadlines and presentations. I never confronted him. I never hinted that I had questions. My role did not require speculation, so I did not offer any. Instead, I kept copies of everything: dates, invoices, authorizations, reconciliations. I filed them as carefully as I organized my coursework. I never altered a single document. I never shared my observations. I simply preserved what already existed. As the months passed, the amounts grew bolder. The approvals became faster. The confidence in those transactions suggested a belief that no one would ever examine them closely. My silence created the illusion that everything remained unnoticed. Meanwhile, I understood the pattern well enough to predict when the next irregularity would appear. When I accepted the position with a rival company, I still said nothing. The files remained untouched in a folder that did not belong to him or to me. It belonged to the truth that would eventually surface with, or without, my involvement. I did not prepare a case. I did not prepare a complaint. I did not need to. I did not need to expose anything. I just stopped protecting it. The board meeting unfolded on a quiet morning that looked ordinary from the outside. I was not in the room. I was not on the call. I was beginning my first week in my new office, while the company I had left opened a discussion that no one could soften. The chair requested a review of several transactions. He asked for explanations that matched the reports. Every document carried its own weight. There were no raised voices. There were no accusations. There was only a sequence of questions presented with patience and clarity. The board members moved from one file to the next. They compared signatures. They verified timelines. They examined approvals that appeared rushed. The numbers created a story that could not be reshaped by confidence or charm. I learned afterward that my former boss attempted to fill the silence with long speeches. He explained market pressure. He offered theories about system errors. He suggested miscommunication between teams. Yet every time he tried to shift the narrative, the documents remained unchanged. Numbers do not adjust themselves to soothe egos. They hold their position without apology. The turning point came when a board member asked for the oldest record in the sequence. It matched perfectly with the newest one. The pattern became undeniable. The room grew still. No one needed to spell out what the documents already revealed. The meeting ended without dramatic declarations. It ended with quiet understanding. I was never mentioned. My absence protected the integrity of the moment. I did not need to defend anything. The evidence spoke with absolute clarity. Silence lets truth finish the sentence. The call came in the early evening, long after the board meeting had ended. I recognized the number immediately. For a moment, I considered letting it ring, but curiosity led me to answer. His voice sounded unusually warm, almost friendly, as if the years of condescension had never existed. He asked how I was settling into my new role and congratulated me with a tone that tried to disguise unease. I listened without interrupting. Gradually, the warmth faded. A pause settled between us, and then the real reason for his call surfaced. He asked if I had known something was wrong. He asked it softly at first, then again with a tighter edge. His breathing shifted. Panic began to seep through each word as he waited for reassurance that would not come. I remained calm. There was no anger to express and no history to revisit. I offered him a simple sentence, one that did not accuse and did not console. It did not reveal any intention or judgment. It was the kind of line that brings clarity without raising a voice. After I spoke, neither of us filled the silence that followed. He understood that explanations were no longer mine to give. He attempted to recover his composure, but the effort collapsed under the weight of everything he now realized. The conversation ended with a quiet farewell. As I placed the phone down, I felt no triumph, only closure. Authority is not volume. It is timing. His departure did not create chaos. It created space. Within days, the company began repairing what had been ignored for years. Compliance teams gained unrestricted access to every department. Long-delayed reviews were finally completed. Oversight procedures that had been treated as burdens became essential steps in restoring stability. People moved with more confidence because they no longer feared unpredictable reactions or inconsistent rules. The restructuring unfolded steadily. New leadership emphasized accountability rather than spectacle. Meetings shifted from defensive explanations to practical solutions. Departments that once worked in isolation began exchanging information freely. The atmosphere changed so noticeably that visitors commented on the difference without knowing the cause. Employees who had spent years avoiding attention now contributed without hesitation. I observed all of this from my new position at the rival company. I did not follow every update, yet word traveled easily through professional networks. I never repeated his name. I never discussed the details of his exit. The company's progress spoke loudly enough. What struck me most was the collective relief among the staff he once supervised. People were no longer navigating unpredictable moods or rushed approvals. They were rebuilding a structure that finally supported them. The focus returned to quality work rather than managing egos. The organization began to function as it should have all along. His absence did not create bitterness. It created balance. There was no celebration, only renewal and a recognition that stability thrives when truth is allowed to surface. Systems do not seek revenge. They correct imbalance. If you are watching this and you are past 50, then you already understand that life rewards patience far more than it rewards noise. You have lived long enough to see trends appear and disappear, leaders rise and fall, and promises fade when they are not supported by skill. You know that the world often mistakes quiet people for weak people, yet the most decisive moments in any career come from those who observe more than they speak. Experiences leverage when it is documented. Every decision you have witnessed, every problem you solved without recognition, and every pattern you identified before others noticed holds value. It becomes a private archive that cannot be removed by a title change or an unexpected meeting. When you keep records of your work and understand the reasoning behind your choices, you carry authority that does not require permission. Education is power when applied quietly. It does not need applause. It strengthens your judgment, sharpens your intuition, and allows you to speak only when it matters. Your strength at this stage of life is not measured by how much noise you make, but by how precisely you understand what is happening around you. Respect is enforced by structure, not titles. Systems outlast personalities. Procedures outlast temperaments. When you know how organizations truly function, you no longer chase validation. You design your own